Hello and welcome to this detailed guide to completing the Duo Taniks Low Guardian challenge from the Deep Stone Crypt raid in Season of the Chosen. If you've been thinking about attempting this challenge or were struggling to complete it last season, definitely try to get it done this season because there are some amazing artifact mods that make it much easier to do consistent damage, both in DPS phases and at final stand. First, I have to give huge credit to the initial teams to complete this challenge last year though. Salter Greppo and Quaz from Elysium, who got the world first, and Giggs and Vendetta from Tier 1. Both teams were theory crafting strats at the same time and influencing each other's runs, so huge thanks to them for proving it was possible. Most of the strats in this video come from those runs, and then we iterated our own builds and routines over many hours after that. Also shout out to Soldiers of Heaven, who we learnt double priming the thrusters from. Our full side-by-side clear will start shortly without commentary for those who just want to see the run, but I'll be going into way too much detail on every section of this challenge at the end of the video for those who are interested. Just a couple of points to clarify for anyone who doesn't want to stick around for the full explanation later, but we used Divinity instead of both players being on double slugs, which we found to be much safer and more consistent for us. And because I had space on the screen due to the side-by-side edit, I've listed the most important gear and mods we have equipped during every phase, so you can check at a glance what we're running. I didn't list basic ones like Shotgun Finder and Scavenger mods, but obviously if you have space for those, you'll want to run them. You might notice I have lots of Warmind cell mods equipped for DPS, but there are never any cells. And that's because I messed up spawning one every single time. But as you'll also see, it doesn't matter because we still hit final stand without them. So although cells can help compensate on damage a bit, they're not essential. Anyway, for now, enjoy the run. Alright. We can do this. Wait, what? Oh. I'm a bit slow getting to spawn. 1 and 2. One, 2, 3, 4, slightly delayed, prime, break, prime, okay. I got a prime. Oh no, is the purple going to break that? No good. Yeah, I judged all my distances wrong there.
7.
Six coming to spawn. That was a bad grenade at the end there. Never mind. 3 and 6. Right, he's teleporting. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, break, and break. I'm going for 6, meet for 3. How's your radiation when you picked it up?
2.
Okay, it's going to be close, but normally I go for it anyway, don't I? Pick it up off you.
Yeah. I'm at 7. 8, 9,
6, 7, 8. I'll be fine.
deactivated.
Fuck. No cell.
Oh, you absolute fuck.
Whoa, where the fuck did you go?
Yeah, I know. Sorry about that.
That happens. Happens to the best of us. I.e. you.
I mean, it got... Yeah, never mind. Okay, I'm picking up. Kind of orange.
I think it's 1 and 2. Yeah, it is 1 and 2. Got my prediction skills off the chain, mate. Right, let's just try and kill this captain. Do you fucking want to... Oh, there's another captain here now. Good. Alright, spawn's now clear after all that.
Yep. It's going to be blue that's not.
Alright. Don't blow up that cell. It's a bit late. 1, 2, 3, 4, prime, double prime, break. I know we don't normally prime on left, but I had an opportunity because all the ads were with you. I mean on blue. So were you all, was it primed on right?
I didn't prime.
Okay, that's fine. So no right, no right.
Okay, I'm 6, 7.
Bit weak. Thank you. Oh no, oh no! Fucking hell, how did I manage to fucking skip that so much? Right. That's the worst grenade I've ever done in that situation. 1 and something at blue. Three. Hopefully this isn't too bad. Oh my god. Right, let's... Right, so it's 1 and 3, no R. 1. Fuck me. 2. 3. So you need to prime yours.
Yeah.
4. 5. Break. Yikes. Alright, I'm deactivated. I don't have any tractor to get to you.
Okay, 7, 8, 9.
Need health. Deactivated.
It's DPS, yeah?
Yep. Hope there's ammo for me. Oh yeah, I've got ammo, it's fine. No cell though. Don't think I'm going to get a nade for the second.
Okay.
No nade. Yeah, it's pretty good still. On track.
Shield buff.
Oh, that was worth me using everything I had to kill that guy.
You get some ammo and shit.
Yeah. Oh yeah, fucking full on ammo now. It is, I believe it's 5 and 6. Yeah, 5 and 6, 5 and 6. Right, banking. He's about to do it at spawn.
Yep.
1, 2, 3, 4 prime. Oh no, double prime. Break.
I've got no prime.
Okay, no left, no left. Go for 6, meet you at 5. Ah, I didn't get the fucking tractor buff.
I'm on 7, 8. I'm just gonna die here. 9. This is DPS, yeah?
No, no, no.
Oh, it's not, is it? Yeah, shit.
Right, it's coming orange. It's 2 and 4, I think. I'll double check that in a minute.
There was no left, wasn't it?
It was, well, that's your side. So whatever that was, I don't know.
At spawn, no left. Yeah.
Okay.
So it'll actually be yours.
He's doing it, he's doing it.
Yep.
1, 2, 3, 4, prime, and break. Alright, 4, meet you for 2.
Okay, I'm on 7, 8, 9.
Right, this is DPS. No cell. I'm swapping.
Holy shit!
Yes!
No way! Oh my god.
I was fucking shaking in my chair for that last DPS phase. So that was the run. GG's to Malibu for sticking it out with me for so long. I'm now going to go through every phase of the challenge and the strats we used in detail, so hopefully by the end of this you won't have any questions left unanswered. And if you do, please leave a comment on the video and I'll try to answer it. First up, the rally flag. This is something you're only going to want to do once you're more comfortable with the challenge. I'd recommend doing this once you start to chain more than one DPS phase together and you're on track with damage. First, rally as normal. Then start the encounter and wipe so you start the next attempt with full ammo and supers already. Then have one player plant a flag while shooting Taniks to start the encounter, but don't rally to it yet. This leaves the flag available for the entire encounter so you can rally to it when needed at final stand. In terms of loadouts and builds, you both want to be running 100 mobility when not in DPS. This is absolutely essential. The margins of error in this encounter are so tight that half a second can and often will spare a death. You want to carry the nuclear cores fast to keep radiation as low as possible from first through to second set of cores. So you need the max walking speed that comes with 100 mobility. Malibu was on Warlock with Well of Radiance, Solar Grenades and Healing Rift, running a Heritage Kinetic Slug with Reconstruction Recombination, 7th Seraph SMG with Dragonfly, and Anarchy. He paired those with Necrotic Grip Gauntlets for really effective ad clear from the poison spread, and for mods he had a Protective Light charged with light build with Taking Charge and Stacks on Stacks, Global Reach for bigger radius on Warmind cell damage, melee damage resistance, arc damage resistance, special finisher, 2 Herd Thinner raid mods, shotgun and grenade launcher ammo finder, shotgun scavenger, SMG loader, and focusing lens from the chosen seasonal artifact. He would start the encounter by placing the rally flag, then do 2 or 3 special finishers near the doors at spawn to leave ammo bricks for later, before going to orange to clear ads using Necrotic Grip poison spread and SMG Warmind cells, and then collect the suppressor augment. I was running Titan Stasis Behemoth with the Cryoclasm aspect for the long slide, and the Howl of the Storm aspect for creating additional stasis walls from slide melees, which also works during super. I'll cover this more in the section on slowing, but I didn't actually use Howl of the Storm during our clear run, and it has a pretty specific use case scenario, so you might prefer to run Tectonic Harvest instead. You'll have 3 fragment slots either way. For fragments, I ran Fissures for increased size and damage of stasis breaks, Shards for increased grenade recharge rate on stasis breaks, and Durance for increased duration of slow effects. It's worth noting now that you can't switch fragments or aspects mid-run, or it will reset all your ability cooldowns. You can, however, change your stasis grenade type. I start the encounter on Glacier Grenades and then switch before DPS to Duskfield. For weapons, I ran a Heritage Kinetic Slug with autoloading holster recombination, 7th Seraph CQC-12 shotgun with lead from gold Vorpal weapon, and tractor cannon. I paired those with Armamentarium for holding 2 grenades, which is amazing for ad clear, slowing Taniks, and DPS, so I strongly recommend running it. And for mods, I had a Protective Light charged with light build with Taking Charge, Quick Charge, and Supercharged, Fireteam Medic for healing on Warmind cell detonation, melee damage resistance, arc damage resistance, fast ball for consistent grenade throws during the slow phase, 2 enhanced operator raid mods, better already, as well as shotgun ammo finder, shotgun scavenger, shotgun loader, and explosive finisher, which I never actually used, but it's good to have as an option if you need to get a grenade back before DPS. A quick note on the enhanced operator raid mod though. At the time of this video, it's currently bugged and stacking multiple copies provides no additional effect. With one mod, while not holding an augment, each orb of power you collect gives 1 stack of a buff called Generate Heavy Ammo. Once you collect 10 orbs for a ×10 stack, you'll be given some heavy ammo to your reserves. With 2 mods, each orb should be worth double, meaning you'd get heavy ammo after 5 orbs, but currently, even with 2 or 3 mods, it still takes 10 orbs. So hopefully Bungie patches this in the future, as that would be really useful in this challenge to control the RNG of ammo drops. It's very unlikely that either player will be able to collect 10 orbs in the short amount of time between holding an active augment, but they could reasonably get 5. At the start of the encounter, I head to blue to clear the ads as fast as possible, collect the scanner augment, and then head to spawn while reading the glowing bins. Going clockwise from starting position, the bins are numbered 1 and 2 at spawn, 3 and 4 at blue, 5 and 6 at orange. I put a glacier wall down to protect me while I bank the scanner augment and type the callouts into text chat, then break the crystal and ad clear at spawn, ready for the thrusters phase. I bank the scanner augment now so that I can guarantee I won't be deactivated during the first set of cores, so later I can quickly read the bins for the second set to predict Taniks' movements and get a head start on slowing him. The reason I run double special ammo weapons during this phase instead of everyone's favourite Warmind Cell SMG is because I swapped to Divinity before DPS, which also uses special ammo. And if you swap to a weapon that uses a different ammo type, you'll have 0 available ammo in the new weapon. Because my Divinity is so critical at DPS, I can't risk not having enough to get through the whole phase just because of bad luck of special ammo brick availability nearby. So with my Seraph CQC, I not only have lead from gold for bonus ammo when collecting a heavy brick, but I also have Vorpal weapon, which increases damage against the elite captains that spawn. So I can tag a captain with 1 shot of tractor cannon to break its shield, suppress and weaken it, then pull out the CQC and kill it in 2 shots, spawning a guaranteed Warmind Cell to kill all nearby red bars as well as healing me. Also, by running Taking Charge and Quick Charge and using Tractor and CQC for ad clear, I'm quickly filling up on Charged with Light up to ×4 thanks to Supercharged, ready for a long period of damage resistance while running the cores. I love this build for this challenge and highly recommend everyone tries it due to the speed of ad clear, survivability and ammo economy. The Seraph CQC is in Banshee's loot pool currently, so get handing in those weapon parts. Before moving on to the thrusters phase, another essential tip. Never pick up an augment from the floor that was dropped from a player dying. It will bug out. In this clip, you can see me get revived following a scuffed damage phase, pick up my scanner augment from the floor, and none of the bins are lit up for me. In that situation, I should have let the dropped one despawn, then go back over to blue, kill a fresh Vandal, and pick up a new scanner augment. Now, fair warning, this part of the video up until slowing Taniks is going to be very long, because the timing windows on everything are so tight, and there are lots of different tips and tricks you can use to give yourself an edge, but they all have variations depending on the different bin combinations and Taniks locations, so please excuse the info dump. But I figured it was better to just put it all in here as a resource for people to be able to reference, rather than just arbitrarily trying to cut the length of the video down. If you feel you already have this stuff nailed down, feel free to skip to the section on slowing Taniks, but getting consistent and avoiding deaths in the thrusters and cores phase is where most of your practice time will probably be. Compared to this, DPS and even Final Stand is easy. One thing the scanner should start getting used to is being able to quickly read the glowing bins and using that info to predict where Taniks is moving to. There'll be more on this later in the slowing Taniks section, but for now at the start of the encounter, just know that Taniks will never start at blue first, only spawn or orange. For example, if bins 1 and 2 are lit up, you know he's moving to orange, whereas at any other phase in the encounter, that would mean he could move to orange or blue. Once Taniks is in position, his thrusters will light up and be damageable. It's really important as soon as he starts this phase to not use area of effect or spreading damage over time weapons or abilities that might accidentally damage or break the thrusters. The strat we use primes all the thrusters during this first phase so that when it's time to break, they each pop with a single shot of heritage, so any unintended damage will screw this up. Examples of damage that can cause this include detonating Warmind cells nearby, especially if you're running Global Reach like I was in this clip, which can cause damage basically across the entire map. This is one of the reasons I ran Fireteam Medic instead, so I can still shoot cells during thrusters phase when I'm far away from Taniks. You might also remember in our full clear I call out a reminder to Malibu not to shoot a cell he just spawned for this reason. He probably wasn't going to shoot it anyway, but it's better to be safe. Reactive Pulse will also damage the thrusters, so don't use this mod. The poison from Necrotic Grip will spread to Taniks if enemies die near him, so you need to show restraint when ad clearing on the side he's moving to. The explosion from breaking a captain's shield with void damage can also break thrusters if close enough to Taniks, and the purple rain attacks will also damage and break thrusters if you move too close or pass underneath him while priming them. So the routing both players take for approach and retreat here needs to be safe and consistent.
Good start.
We're really nailing this start early, be fresh thing, aren't we?
Yeah.
For example, we always had Scanner take left side and Suppressor take right side. Because we're forcing the Suppressor to be deactivated first, they are always going to be approaching the second set of thrusters later from the right, after picking up their augment from the terminal. So it makes sense to keep this pattern for the first set of thrusters, so we're keeping unnecessary variance to a minimum. The exception we made to this is during the first set of thrusters at spawn, where Suppressor takes left because sometimes Taniks moves into position early, and if the Suppressor is delayed in getting their augment, they only just have time to get to the left-hand side. Sometimes Taniks will spin to be more of a diamond shape than a square before activating thrusters, which can make it confusing to read, and you might shoot the same ones as each other and cause unnecessary breaks, especially with this strat where we prime all the thrusters at the same time. Our system was the player on the left takes left and back, while the player on the right takes right and front. This level of planning and detail might seem overkill, but it's worth considering in advance. You don't want to wipe after 2 good DPS phases just because he spins and it throws off your timing. Make a plan and stick to it if it happens. When approaching Taniks, he'll be doing the purple rain attacks, and it's a good idea to count those to be in sync with your breaks. If you break after 7, you risk the wipe mechanic, so having both breaks somewhere between 5 and 6 is perfect, and gives plenty of time to finish clearing ads and get into position, as well as reducing radiation as much as possible on the second set. As the scanner, I made the callouts on the numbers of purple rain and when I was priming and breaking. I'd count 3 rains, then call prime with a single heritage ×10 recombination shot to one thruster, double prime with 2 standard heritage shots to the other thruster, and then break on the final shot to drop the core. The reason we prime all the thrusters now is to make breaking on the second set later quick and consistent, as depending on radiation and augment lockout, we might need to push the break to between 6 and 7. And also if the second set is at spawn, I can break both myself quickly in 2 shots while Malibu is at the terminal, which is much further away when at spawn. The Suppressor should listen to these callouts so they're ready to break once they hear the scanner's core drop, but they can do their own priming at any time. Malibu would often prime both thrusters straight away, then pull right back, leading the purple rain away from Taniks, giving him space to come back in later. This worked well because if my rhythm got disrupted after missing a shot due to flinch or hitting immune on a thruster, Malibu wouldn't be trapped right next to Taniks and die to the rain while still waiting for my core to drop. Because the operator bubble and suppression timers don't start until the second core has dropped, it's important the suppressor's core doesn't drop before the scanners. As the suppressor has to wait longer before picking up, they should always pick up the second core, so having them delay their break until they actually hear the first core drop is perfect, as it naturally gives a 1 to 2 second gap between them. Don't leave it too long though, as if it drops 3 or more seconds after, there's a good chance the scanner won't be able to pick up their core before it detonates. No, it blew up. For the scanner, once both cores are down, you should get to a safe distance while watching the timer above the second core that dropped. Once it says 6 seconds, jump and hover, then press melee when you see Taniks' animation lift him into the air at around 5 seconds. This will have you safely pop out of the operator bubble as it appears around you mid-air. You should aim to land on or right next to the first core that dropped, quickly hit Taniks with tractor cannon to apply the scientific method speed boost buff, pick up your core, and start running to your bin. Before the thrusters phase, you want to clear as many ads as possible and be aware of any that remain, because otherwise your melee might track to one of the enemies nearby and you'll get trapped in the bubble. For the suppressor, once both cores are down, go to your nearest suppress ball, shoot Taniks as soon as he turns blue, run towards the core, tag Taniks with Anarchy, pick up the core and run under the middle ball, the far ball, and then on to meet the scanner. Sometimes while waiting to do the melee to avoid the operator bubble, Taniks won't do his animation. So if you're only looking for that as your cue, you'll just get trapped while waiting, which is obviously a run killer. Thankfully, there is a safety net for this, but unfortunately, it means keeping a close eye on two different things at the same time. What you need to look at is the timer on the second core that drops, the one the suppressor will be picking up. You'll be jumping and hovering at 6 seconds, expecting the animation anytime from about 5 seconds, but if it hits 4 seconds, melee immediately.
You fucker.
Be ready to hit melee as soon as you see the number 4, no matter what, because there is a very high chance in that scenario he's not doing the animation. Sometimes he still does do the animation, either starting at 4 or just after, but thankfully because you're hovering in the air to start with, your melee will travel so far that you'll still just break out of the operator bubble at the end of your travel. Now, you can't choose to only look at the timer, because if he starts the animation at 5 as normal and you're waiting until you see 4, you might get trapped. So the rule is, hover at 6, look for the animation from 5, but hit melee at 4 no matter what, and you'll nail it every time.
He didn't do his animation, did he?
No, but I did it. Similar to the no animation thing for the scanner, there is another bug that affects the suppressor, but unfortunately we haven't found any way of countering it. It's when Taniks delays turning blue, meaning the suppressor has to wait to clear the first suppressed ball, which in turn delays sticking Anarchy and picking up the core, which can cause a wipe if the delay is significant. Normally Taniks turns blue as he's rising up in his animation, but sometimes he'll turn blue as he's falling from the animation, or in extreme situations well after the animation has finished. The only clear video example of a long delay I have is from blue, which is the only point where you might get away with it due to how close the suppressor balls are to Taniks. So here, Malibu was still able to get the pickup in time. If this had happened at Orange or Spawn, it definitely would have been a wipe. Now, we don't know what causes it. For a long time, we felt there was some correlation between breaking the second thruster very late, just before the wipe mechanic kicks in, and a long delay happening. But we recently spent hours trying to force that to replicate it, and couldn't make him delay once. And in the previous clip example from Blue, we broke well within the 5 to 6 purple rain window. So unfortunately, if it happens, it's just bad luck, and hopefully you get away with it. The optimal routing for running the cores varies slightly depending on Taniks' position and bin callouts, but the rule of thumb is, scanner takes the first core to whichever bin is closest so they can get back to the suppressor faster. After banking the first core, the scanner should tractor cannon the nearby enemies and use 2 stasis slides to get to the suppressor as soon as possible. If there are lots of enemies around, it's amazing if you can get off a second tractor hit after the first slide, because refreshing that speed boost will keep it going while running the second core, getting you to the second bin even faster. Once that transfer happens, the suppressor should use their Divine Protection grenade ability to heal and overshield you both on the way to the second bin, as there will be enemies all around. Have the suppressor call their radiation from about 6 or 7 onwards, so the scanner can judge when to take it. Ideally, the suppressor wants to only hit 7 radiation from the first set, but if it's a particularly bad bin combination, such as 4 and 6 from Spawn, they might hit 8 or 9 radiation. At the very latest, I would start interacting at the 8.5 mark for safety.
Okay, 7, 8, 9.
Right, I'm good. If you hear your teammate call 9 and you haven't started the interact yet, they're probably going to die. The aim with this first set of cores is to reduce the suppressor's radiation as much as possible, so they have 0 before the second set. Because they won't have the tractor speed buff, on the second set, depending on the bins and Taniks' position, they might have to be holding their core all the way to 9 radiation before the handover. I'm a little bit late getting to you.
Yeah.
There's 2 captains in blue as well.
8.
Radiation increases by 1 point for every 2 seconds you're holding a core, but it decreases by 1 point for every 10 seconds when not holding one. Because the radiation increases 5 times faster than it falls, it's really important to cut down the carry time as much as possible. Here are a few shortcuts and movement tips I can give to help with this. When the bins are 1 and 2 from blue, it's a short run, so the scanner will have to wait before the bin opens. They can wait right next to the pillar behind bin 2 for cover from nearby enemies, and because the interact radius on offline bins is so huge, which is normally a bad thing, you can use that to your advantage here to tell when it opens. Once the offline prompt disappears, move around and dunk the core. When running to bin 5 from blue, you can cut the corner up the large yellow pipe onto the platform on the left, then drop down to deposit. And when running to 6 from spawn, you can cut through the gaps underneath the platform on the right. When you have bins split between orange and spawn coming from blue, send the scanner to orange as it's the furthest run and they have the tractor speed boost, and the suppressor to spawn, as they'll be finishing their suppression run near the tunnel to spawn anyway, so they have less distance to travel. When running to bins 3 and 4 from spawn after the first set of thrusters, the scanner has time to dunk at bin 3, take the second core from the suppressor, then run straight to the augment terminal to retrieve the scanner augment early before dunking the second core in bin 4. The reasons we did this, even though it increases the scanner's radiation to 9, is because it buys a few extra seconds for the suppressor's radiation to decrease, as well as for them to bank their deactivated augment early. This is important because with Taniks at spawn on the first set, we know there's a chance he will start to move to blue after both cores are dunked, and when Taniks moves to blue, it's the hardest movement to get a good delay on. With a bad delay, not only might the suppressor still be on cooldown and not be able to collect their augment in time, meaning they might also get trapped in the operator bubble, but their radiation will be high, and from blue, the bins might be split between orange and spawn, meaning both players have to run all the way to their own bins. The scanner can get away with depositing at orange with leftover radiation due to the tractor cannon speed boost, but for the suppressor to make it all the way to bin 1 on their own, they need all the help they can get. So if you can make it work, this trick comes in really handy. This next tip has two variations depending on whether you're dealing with the first set or the second set of cores. When you have split bins coming from spawn on the first set of cores, have scanner dunk blue first, then meet at the corner to carry to orange. But when you have split bins coming from spawn on the second set, you'll want the scanner to dunk at orange first for two reasons. Reason 1, because the suppressor is deactivated, they'll be taking right side at spawn, so we'll end their suppressions close to orange, meaning you can do a quick handover outside orange after the first core is dunked. And reason 2, you'll be dunking the second core nearer to spawn before DPS, giving yourself more time to prepare with gear swaps, ammo pickups, and generating a Warmind cell if possible. Finishing at orange and then running all the way up to spawn before DPS is much worse for all of these things. Sometimes you'll hit Taniks with Tractor and the game won't give you the speed boost. Or he'll move after the cores drop and you'll be slightly out of range, which is annoying but in most cases fine, because a lot of the time with the first core, even with the speed buff, you'll get to the bin early and have to wait for suppression to finish anyway. Sometimes I take a longer zigzag route to avoid enemy fire on the way to waste this time. So on the first core, there's less difference between tractor boost and no tractor boost. It's more problematic when you have long runs on both cores though, such as a 4 and 5 split from spawn. But if you're looking at a short run on the first core, like 3 from spawn, 4 from orange, or 2 from blue, you're better off not tractoring Taniks on the pickup and instead save the tractor ammo for the run back to the suppressor for the second core, which is much more important. Also, if the second core dropped very late, due to a longer than intended gap between the first and second thruster breaking, it's best to not spend time trying to use Tractor and just go for the immediate pickup instead to avoid a detonation wipe. In this case, try not to interact with the core too early while you're still in the end of the melee animation, as the interact will be interrupted as the animation ends. Instead, wait until both feet are on the ground before interacting and you should just get away with it, unless the second core was delayed far too much. Believe it or not, I actually have more to say about the core carrying phase, but specifically about the second set just before DPS, so I'll come back to that later and move on to slowing Taniks for now. As soon as the second core is dunked, Taniks will begin moving into position. As a side note, for some reason taking a core from another player resets your default weapon to your kinetic, so as you dunk the second core, swap to tractor cannon, hit a nearby enemy, slide to the augment terminal to get the scanner buff back, then jump into the middle to get ready to slow Taniks. It's also at this point we had the suppressor swap their SMG to first in last out, so they could start collecting ammo ahead of DPS. Don't worry, you can still shoot Taniks with a slug shotgun to clear the first suppressed ball, even 10 damage is enough to trigger it. As you're moving from the terminal, quickly see if any of the bins next to you are glowing. If so, you know Taniks isn't moving to the side you're at, which means he's moving to the only other empty side, so you can start slowing as soon as possible. If none of the bins next to you are glowing, then Taniks might be moving to you, but you need to check the other bins to confirm first. Obviously, if the glowing bins are split between any two sides, then you know he's moving to the empty side. But what if both glowing bins are at the same side? You'd think that would be harder to predict because you'd have two options, right? But there are actually some combinations of this that never happen, so by learning those, you can narrow down the possibilities even more. Now, Malibu and I are not the best in the world at this game. Those players all got this challenge done 3 months ago. But we have put a lot of time into this challenge to compensate, probably 50 hours or more over many weeks. And just for this video, I've logged over 20 hours of footage from failed attempts. In all of those clips, I never saw, and Malibu and I have no memories of this ever happening, any situation where Taniks went to blue with bins 5 and 6 glowing, or where Taniks went to orange with bins 3 and 4 glowing. I'm happy to be corrected on this if anyone has a clip of either of these, but as far as I'm concerned, these combinations don't exist, which is great as it makes him much more predictable. So, if you see bins 3 and 4, or bins 5 and 6 glowing, you know he's coming to spawn. If bins 1 and 2 are glowing, then that means Taniks could move to either blue or orange. Now, if you have bins 1 and 2 with Taniks leaving blue or orange, then you know he's just hopping over to the other one, which is easy.
1 and 2, that means he's coming to orange. 1 and 2, going to blue.
So that means there's only one possible combination of all bins and starting positions where there's any confusion as to where Taniks is moving to, and you have to wait to see what direction he travels in. And that is bins 1 and 2 when Taniks is leaving spawn. That's it, just one. Now that you know that, he becomes much more predictable and easier to do big slows earlier.
Or is he? I can't. Is he going to orange? Are you joking me?
Does look like
No,
it
he's
now.
not. He's not.
What?
Mate, if I can do that every time.
A good rule of thumb when laying crystals is to use a grenade to get an early delay near Taniks. Fastball is great for getting consistent long-range throws here. Then half your super to block and trap Taniks in and around where he currently is, then turn around and use the rest of your super, filling in the final area he'll stop at. You want the last crystals you lay down to be at his final point because those will melt last, and you want him to stay there as long as possible. So if you get lucky and you manage to trap him with the grenade and early super crystals, great. But if not and he pushes through the early crystals like he often does at blue, at least you have a blanket of backup crystals at the end. Sometimes it's tempting to use up all your crystals in the middle or all the crystals at the final position, but you're much less likely to get consistent slows overall, so always try to split them. You can also try to experiment with the Howl of the Storm stasis aspect, which creates a stasis wall if you slide and charged melee together. Although you want to save your charged melees for escaping the operator bubble, this aspect also works while in super, using super energy instead. I found it was a little inconsistent, but in the right place with the right timing, you might find it more effective than a standard heavy slam spread of crystals. Take this clip. Taniks has detoured from the first door outside blue because of the early grenade and crystals I've already laid. He's coming towards me and the second door. But as soon as that aspect wall comes up in his path, he changes direction again. I've done a lot of slows using the super slam, and I'm not convinced it would have had the same effect as that, especially at blue, which is one of the least consistent sides. So it's worth thinking about. If Taniks gets delayed enough that he stops trying to move and instead teleports to his final position, that's perfect and means you couldn't have slowed him any more than you have. Give yourself a high five. But if Taniks pushes through all the crystals and starts doing his thrusters phase early...
Wow, he did not give a shit about those crystals.
Then you'll have to break the thrusters as late as possible and hope Taniks' operator bubble doesn't trap the suppressor while they're still waiting on their augment lockout. You'll also have to consider whether you can get away with having higher radiation for the next bin combinations, or you'll have to start planning ahead for a tactical death.
He did not give a shit about any of them crystals. That was a joke.
So, now you're going to break the second set of thrusters and carry the second set of cores. Everything from before still applies, except now the remaining thrusters should already be primed to break in a single shot. Approach while counting the purple rain and break as late as possible to get maximum radiation reduction. At blue and orange, we would each break our own thrusters, then have the suppressor collect their augment from the terminal and get into position. But at spawn, the suppressor would go straight to the terminal and I would break both thrusters myself because here the terminal is so much further away from Taniks.
3, so you need to prime yours.
If for some reason one or other of the sides wasn't primed during first thrusters, it should have been called out at the time and put in the text chat as a reminder, so check that in case you need to put extra shots into one of the sides. You don't want to forget, then try to break as late as possible for radiation and end up wiping because you went past 7 on the rain. If you're following this guide, you'll be doing 3 full core phases, so you have to be consistent and minimize deaths. You only have 1 res token each, so you can't just default to a death on every core phase. Because of this, keeping radiation as low as possible during the first set of cores, and then getting a maximum delay on Taniks, is the most important part of this challenge.
If this isn't a good slow, I don't know what fucking is.
The second most important part is being able to recognize when you failed to keep your radiation low, and knowing the difference in advance between when you can push for a dunk at the last bin with no deaths, or when you should be planning for a death, who's going to take it, and where. The absolute worst case scenario in this situation is leaving it up to luck, full sending it to that final bin and either dying just in front of it with the core on the floor surrounded by ads, or dying while dunking, which then starts the build up to DPS and you're wasting time when you should be collecting ammo and spawning a Warmind cell already. Not to mention trying to stand in the right place to get the revive while you're being melted by ads, and fighting the massive interact radius of the offline bin.
I can't actually get you up.
If you're not thinking ahead like this and you're just rolling the dice of hoping you get lucky with radiation and bin positions every time, then you're introducing so many unnecessary variables into your runs that will mostly end in wipes, so get used to making these decisions early during this phase. Here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. On this run from orange, we dunk the first set of cores at bin 3 and then bin 2, with both of us finishing at 7 radiation, which is about the minimum you can expect for this combo. I then get a perfect slow on Taniks moving to spawn where I force a teleport, I break the thrusters between 5 and 6 rain, and at the moment I pick up my core, I'm around 2 seconds away from having 0 radiation. This leftover radiation translates into only half a second of core carrying time lost, so we're in a very good position starting the next run to bin 6 and bin 3, which is one of the longest. Thanks to the tractor cannon speed buff and the shortcut to 6, I get to the bin before it even opens, which is huge. I bank as soon as possible, refresh the tractor boost, take the core from Malibu as late as possible as well, and I dunk at bin 3 after hitting 9 radiation myself. This is about as tight as a success can get, and there's basically nowhere here we could have improved. So, pretty much, if anything about this phase had been worse, i.e. carrying cores for longer in the first set, leaving us with higher radiation, or an imperfect slow on Taniks, or not getting the tractor speed boost for the second set, then this would have been a failure and resulted in a death, even if just one of those things had happened. And what do you know, I've got a perfect example of that happening too. This whole clip is almost identical to the one I just showed you, but the main difference that affected us is that the first set of cores were 3 and 1, instead of 3 and 2. Because I had to carry the second core just a few extra meters, I finish at radiation 8 instead of 7. From there it's pretty much the same. I get another perfect slow on Taniks moving to spawn resulting in a teleport, I break thrusters between 5 and 6 rain, but this time because of the increased leftover radiation, at the moment I pick up I'm still around 13 seconds away from having 0 radiation. This leftover radiation translates into about 2.5 seconds of core carrying time lost, compared to only half a second time lost in the previous clip. Now we're running to bins 6 and 4. Again, I get the tractor speed boost and the shortcut to 6, getting to the bin before it opens. Then I refresh the tractor boost, take the second core from Malibu as late as possible, but this time I die to 10 radiation just as I'm starting the interact at the bin. And bin 4 is even closer than bin 3, which we had in the previous clip, so this was also an easier second set. So what made the difference there? Literally just 1 extra point of radiation carried over from the first set of cores that lost us 2 seconds of carrying time during the second set. If I'd had those 2 seconds back, we would have dunked without a death. But you're probably now thinking, what could we have done differently? How could we have prevented that death on the second clip, rather than just recognising we should have forced the death earlier to make the revive easier? And honestly, I'm not sure there is anything. Maybe if I hadn't bumped against the captain leading to bin 1 on the first set, maybe if I'd pushed the second thruster brakes to between 6 and 7 rain. So it goes to show in this challenge, unfortunately there is an element of good RNG that you're hoping for with the bin combinations, so you don't get 2 long carries back to back. But the more you practice, the more combinations you'll be able to turn into successes, and you can cut down on that variance. So, always check your radiations when picking up the second cores, especially when doing long runs like splits between orange and blue or orange and spawn, and if necessary, plan ahead to have someone die in the middle of the arena for a safe revive. But remember, the bins are on a timer, so even though the player who died can pick up the core with 0 radiation, if you then wait too long to dunk it, the bin will go offline again and you'll wipe. Once the second core has been dunked, always remember to bank the deactivated augment in the terminal, then we're on to DPS. The vast majority of clears of this challenge I've seen had both players using double slug shotguns, with one on tractor cannon for the debuff and one on anarchy. Plus they used different strats leading up to DPS so they could guarantee the scanner would not be deactivated, to stack enhanced scanner augment raid mods for an additional debuff on top of tractor. Now, we tried this DPS strat a lot. We kept coming back to it as we got more consistent with the core phases, and every time we ditched it because we hated it. Now, if this strat works for you, that's great. Stick with it and you can do a lot more damage each phase. Plus, with the chosen seasonal mod focusing lens on top, you're much more likely to get a 2-phase out of it, which is huge. However, I'm not going to do a detailed guide on that strat because we never got it to work properly for us for the following reasons. Taniks' hitbox on his head is tiny, and because you're angled up to look at him, is even smaller in practice. Plus, he bobs around a lot and sometimes waves his hand in front of his face. You'll end up getting body shot damage while shooting him in the chin, so you have to aim for the tip of his forehead, where you're just as likely to miss a shot as get a precision hit. And remember, you're trying to hit this tiny moving target while also sprint cancelling double slugs and being flinched by enemy gunfire and grenades. It's a fucking nightmare. Also, the scanner buff is extremely inconsistent. The wording of the paint the target effect from the enhanced scanner augment raid mod is, with the scanner augment, powerful targets are marked by precision shots and take increased damage for a short period. In this clip, you can see I swapped to 4 pieces of raid armor with the scanner mod applied before DPS, and I'm holding the scanner augment, which hasn't been deactivated, so paint the target should be in effect. I apply tractor cannon, it's my first shot, but then hit 7 consecutive precision hits, and all of them are the standard damage numbers you get from just a Well of Radiance, tractor cannon, and boss spec weapon mod on the Heritage, 49k, and First In Last Out with Vorpal, 53k. Whereas if you go back to look at the world first runs of this challenge, they're getting huge damage increases within only a couple of precision hits. I have no idea what's causing the scanner mod to not work for us, but if you want to both run double slugs, I wish you the best of luck. What we found worked much more consistently for us at damage phase was having one player use Divinity so that the other player could use double slugs with Anarchy and fire as fast as possible due to a very large hitbox of the Divinity cage. So instead of both players trying to do a medium amount of damage, we had one player trying to do a massive amount of damage. Before DPS, I swapped my heavy weapon to a 7th Seraph Saw machine gun with Clown Cartridge and Vorpal. my energy weapon to divinity, and for armor, I keep armamentarium on, but I swap all 4 other pieces to armor that gives me shotgun dexterity, auto rifle dexterity, which applies to trace rifles, grasp of the Warmind, Warmind's longevity, power of Rasputin, cellular suppression, and focusing lens. I also changed my grenade to Duskfield. Malibu had already swapped his SMG to first in last out with autoloading holster and Vorpal during the slow phase, so before DPS only changes gauntlets and boots to use Lunafaction boots with power of Rasputin and 2 shotgun dexterity mods. To get the most out of each DPS phase, we aimed to have Well of Radiance giving a 25% buff, Divinity giving a 30% debuff, Focusing Lens from my Duskfield grenades giving an additional 25% debuff on all light ability and elemental weapon damage, and Power of Rasputin from a Warmind cell giving an additional 10% buff. The description of Focusing Lens reads, "Your light abilities do bonus damage to combatants affected by stasis," but the cool thing about this mod is that any light elemental damage dealt from within Well of Radiance counts as ability damage, so first in last out, Anarchy, Divinity, and Malibu solar grenades all get an extra 25% for as long as Taniks is affected by my Duskfield grenade. Because I'm running Armamentarium and the Durance fragment, I get 2 grenades and each one lasts pretty much the entirety of a damage window. As the damage boost from Power of Rasputin is only 10% and the cell only lasts for the length of 1 damage window, it's the least important to have active, but is a nice bonus if you can quickly create one at blue or spawn with a Warmind weapon, either from a single captain kill or from 5 regular enemy kills. If I ended up at orange just before DPS, I wouldn't try to create one because the added distance to get into position meant that I was often late getting into the shock field, and at that point you're losing more damage due to time loss than you would gain from a short 10% buff. During our clear run, you'll notice that I even spawned a cell just as the debris came up, and I didn't even bother picking it up for the same reason. It's much better to just get in straight away if DPS has already started. Any time loss is a big damage loss, even for the sake of a Warmind cell. In fact, for our clear run, I failed to apply a single Warmind cell in time before any of the DPS phases, which was a bit disappointing, but we still made the final stand damage threshold comfortably. So here I'll show you an example of a very good DPS phase from our practice sessions, so you can see the kind of damage that is possible if everything lines up together.
I'm getting slow swaps, it's not good.
Malibu sets the Well of Radiance down and tags Taniks with 2 Anarchy grenades, while I stick him with the Warmind cell and a Duskfield grenade. Then I apply Divinity and hold it long enough for the cage to become thick and bright before starting to hot swap to my Heritage and back again. You might be tempted to try to hot swap more often than I do between the Divinity and Heritage to do more damage, but it's definitely not worth it. As the Divinity cage loses strength, there's a good chance it will start to flicker out and the other player's shots will miss, and with this damage strat, it's mostly about boosting their damage, not yours. Also, the longer the Divinity beam is applied and the longer the cage is near full strength, large chunks of damage will be sporadically dealt by the Divinity, so you're better off only firing 3 or 4 Heritage shots during a window and hoping some of those Divinity chunks proc on top. Sometimes a captain will find their way into the well with you, and although they won't damage you, they can be annoying and get in your way. It's for this reason I have cellular suppression on, so I can quickly flick the Divinity up to the Warmind cell and stun any nearby adds if needed. Now, I never aim down sights during DPS because I don't need to. As I'm shooting my own Divinity cage, the hip-fired slug easily hits it, plus by hip-firing I have increased awareness in my peripheral vision for if I'm getting too close to Taniks and start taking damage from the shock field, and it also feels like my hot swaps are faster without the additional time to ADS. For anyone not familiar with hot swapping, you want to press your key to switch weapon, followed very quickly by move forward and sprint, then repeat. To make it easier, I bound alternate swap to X, alternate forward to Z, and I have sprint toggle on shift anyway. That way I can quickly roll my fingers right to left to swap weapons. I'm holding left click the entire time, so when it's on Divinity it holds the beam, and when I hot swap it fires the Heritage as soon as it's able to because I'm already holding it. So in conclusion, the Divinity slug swap is quite easy and consistent once you get used to it. Malibu has a little more to juggle with his swaps, but in general, after applying Anarchy, he hot swaps between Heritage and First In Last Out until the First In mag is empty, reapplies Anarchy, throws Solar Grenade, and fires more shotgun until the boop animation. When Taniks goes for the boop, both players should move towards Taniks and melee to counteract the force, then step back into the well while reloading anything that needs it, and repeat damage. This way you don't lose time to being launched high and far out of the damage field. So that's how to do safe and consistent damage during Season of the Chosen with Divinity. But what if you're seeing this video from a different season in the future that doesn't have focusing lens available in the artifact? Well, you just do exactly the same minus the Duskfield grenades, but it's much more important to get a Warmind cell on every DPS phase to help out. Here are some examples of good DPS that we did during Season of the Hunt when we didn't have focusing lens, so you can see what to expect.
Good damage.
Oh, and one final thing to show you about DPS. During Season of the Hunt, we had several times where Taniks' health bar just completely stopped moving, at all. This is the worst instance, and we were both aware something was wrong as soon as DPS ended. Now, with the game update that came with the launch of Season of the Chosen, there was a bug fix addressing boss health rubber banding, targeted mainly at Atrax, but I'm hoping it was the same issue that caused this and that it's already fixed. But if not, good luck, because Divinity strat without focusing lens is quite tight already without the game just straight up refusing to recognise half of a damage window. So, once the third DPS phase ends, or you hit the last section of the health bar, Taniks will enrage and Final Stand will begin. Have the Warlock place a healing rift to protect you while you both swap gear as quickly as possible. In general, the aim for our builds was to get a 20% buff from high energy fire while charged with light, plus a 20% debuff from the chosen artifact mod Sundering Glare, which states rapid precision hits against distant combatants weaken them for a short duration. Then we were both running damage dealing supers, Malibu on Chaos Reach and myself on Thunder Crash. After swapping gear, if you have any leftover Anarchy ammo, try to stick Taniks with 2 shots before rallying to the flag and reloading your weapons. This way you can already be dealing passive damage before you have everything else set up. I swap my chest piece to the new Cuirass of the Falling Star, which massively increases the damage dealt by Thunder Crash. Then I swap all 4 other armor pieces to give me Taking Charge, Blast Radius, Radiant Light, High Energy Fire, Stacks on Stacks, Sundering Glare, Sniper Dexterity, Sniper Targeting, and 3 enhanced Scanner Raid mods. Now, I know I said earlier we didn't trust the Scanner mod at DPS because of how inconsistent it was, but as they only cost 1 point each and I could easily fit them into this build, I figured I might as well wear them just in case it decided to proc for us during Final Stand as a bonus. Spoilers, it didn't even though my augment was active. For weapons, I ran Succession with Reconstruction and Recombination, Far Future, the new Chosen Sniper with auto-loading holster and opening shot, and Anarchy. Malibu swaps to Geomag stabilizers for longer duration of Chaos Reach, and armor pieces to give him Taking Charge, Blast Radius, High Energy Fire, Radiant Light, Sniper Dexterity, and the chosen artifact mod Volatile Conduction, which increases the damage of arc supers if activated while critically wounded. Malibu had this on more for the chance that he might be at critical health accidentally due to enemy fire or catching the edge of Purple Rain, rather than deliberately trying to become critical, which at this point in the challenge is very risky having already used a res token, and not running Protective Light anymore. For weapons, Malibu ran Succession with lead from Golden Vorpal, Icalos Sniper with 4th times the charm high impact reserves, and Anarchy. You'll have noticed we're both running Taking Charge, Blast Radius, and Radiant Light. Yes, 3 different ways to become charged with light, from collecting Orbs of Power, grenade launcher multi-kills, and nearby allies casting their super. This is because the only damage buff we're relying on is high energy fire. No Well of Radiance, no Weapons of Light. So we have to make sure we're charged with light at all times. As it happened, Malibu remained charged with light during the 3rd DPS phase, so already had it, and I simply got a multi-kill with Anarchy after rallying the flag. It's a bad idea to only have one source of charged with light here, because if that ends up not being available, you're throwing damage away for no reason. So after rallying, try to refresh the 2 shots of Anarchy on Taniks, but your priority is maintaining consistent, repeated sniper precision hits to apply the Sundering glare debuff. It's for this reason that I'm running 2 snipers with perks, magazines and mods that are all about increasing the size of the magazine. For the player running Sundering glare, you shouldn't care about Vorpal weapon, high impact reserves or boss spec mods on your snipers, but about having as many shots to hand as possible to apply that debuff and keep up that extra 20% on everything. If you have small mags and are getting caught on the reload without proccing the debuff, you're losing more damage than you gain from having, say, Vorpal. For example, my Succession has 8 in the mag and my Far Future has 7, plus both snipers have auto-reloading perks, so I don't waste any time manually reloading. Once you get some precision hits and are confident the debuff is applied, you should pop supers, but maybe wait until Taniks has just teleported to a new side so he doesn't disappear halfway through and waste your damage. And that's it. That's all I've got. Sorry about how long this video turned out, but as I said earlier, I figured it was worth putting absolutely everything I could think of in here so that in the future it could be used as a comprehensive resource for anyone else trying to get this challenge done. I only started doing low Guardian challenges in Destiny 2 last year, but they've easily become one of my favourite things to do in the game. So I figured we've got this done within a couple of months. I put a lot of time into it, we figured out a lot of stuff, so I try and give something back to the community and hopefully help some other people get their clear. Remember, this season, Season of the Chosen, has such a good range of artifact mods to help with this challenge that if you've been thinking about starting it, now's the time to get it done. And good luck with it. Thanks so much for watching, thanks again to Malibu for the hefty time and effort in getting this done, and shout out to Omynous Clan. See you later.
No! What are you doing? Fuck's sake. You scared the absolute shit out of me. You alright? You had a nice time?
1, 2, 3, prime, double prime. We can do this. Scuff. I mean, that's great. That's great.
That's progress.
But good.
No! Fuck's sake.
Fuck me, man. Oh, you dumped it in 2. Hang on, where's the nuke? It's gone to spawn. And now he's doing
weird.
thrusters.
Yeah. It's immune.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Fuck.
Oh, no, no, no.
No, no, no. No, no, no. What? That's bullshit. Right, I'll be fine, I think. Stop pushing me away. Tell you what, while you're on your way back in, maybe that'll work. It will probably work, right? It just wasn't worth the slide back into the debris. Right, 1 and 2, that means nothing to me. Oh, Vienna. I need to start doing the opposite of what I think it is. Oh man, this is bad. This is bad. Oh no.
Well, that is by far our best effort there.
What are you going to do, Taniks? Yes, mate. Go round, you prick. Hopefully this stops him long enough. Yes, mate. You don't know what to do. Get fucked. Oh, he's got an orange. Right. Fucking hell. Fuck me, I guess.
Holy shit! Yes! No way! Oh my god.
You can have one of these. 2.5. Get absolutely fucking shit on. Taniks, I hope you'll be showing your abomination tonight, baby. Because I will be teabagging your corpse when you get fucking dead. Yes. Check that out. We're so fucking good at this game. All it took was fucking about 100 hours.